Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a very favorite show of ours on WBCB 1490 and 107.3 on the dial. It's 10 a.m. Joe, it's 5 after 10. You're right. 5 after 10 in the morning. For those of you who are on your second cup of coffee, turn on, keep the percolator on, because we have a fantastic show, as we always do, with Justice for All. Special guest that we have here, and she's part of the family, Jennifer Schorn, the District Attorney of Bucks County. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, we always appreciate you, and great shows, and that enlightening the listenership about what we do, what the justice system is all about, and what you represent here in Bucks County.
Thank you.
You were very lucky to have Jennifer, as we feel, as our Bucks County District Attorney. And we have some special guests as well. Jovin, he's a Chief Deputy District Attorney. Did I pronounce that right? Was I okay? Good.
No, you're perfect.
And Matt Lannetti, Associate Federal Counsel, Temple University Health.
How's it going?
Yes, nice and clear. And Joe Safran. Joe is one of our regulars. Joe is the chairman of the Bucks County Tour of Honor, among many other privileges that he had serving as a public servant in the Ben-Salem area, president of City Council for many years, the recorder of deeds in Bucks County for many years, one of the leaders in the community, as our district attorney is as well, Jennifer Schorn. I know Charlie's going to give me a hard time, so I will introduce my sidekick here too.
I get to talk some today?
Yes, you do, a little bit.
Doesn't look I'm going to get many words in.
Not today, I'm sorry. Charlie Esposito, the president of our police, fire, and correctional officers, retired police officer as well. And Bree and Elena at the helm, our engineers who are here today. Okay, I guess that's it. We'll see you next week. No, I'm just kidding. That was a Don Rickles, by the way. I don't know if many people were listening to the show. Don would come on to the Johnny Carson show, and they'd play a special song, dun, 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 and he would do his little ovation and sit down and look at Carson and say, okay, I'm done. And he would try to walk away. But, no comedy here.
We're allowed to do that?
No, you're not allowed to do that at all. No, you're not Don Rickles. Okay?
Tom, can I ask a question?
You sure can.
Who's Johnny Carson?
See, you're too young to remember, I know. You wanted me to say that, didn't you? Yeah. But without further ado, I want to bring what's important, the topic, the agenda that we've been preparing for and excited to bring to our listeners and our viewers. Once again, it's another special area, and I'll let Jennifer do the favorable introductions here.
Absolutely. So I invited my colleague Jovin and my former colleague and good friend Matt Lannetti to your show because they prosecuted.
Yours too.
Well, thank you. They prosecuted a pretty remarkable case recently, just last month, murder prosecution. But the story starts in October of 2021, and it started as a missing person, suspected homicide of a man by the name of Matthew Branning. And Matthew was pretty unique in the way he lived his life, and it became pretty apparent that Matthew was very devoted to his family and very predictable in his day-to-day routine. And when he did not return home from work and there was no communication with family members, it became pretty obvious to them that something nefarious happened. And it is a really challenging case when you have a missing person, suspected homicide with no body. But based on the initial reports that came through and the work law enforcement did, which initially was by Percy Borough, and then with one of our colleagues who I believe you met before, he's retired now, but a county detective, David Hanks, it became apparent that there was a suspect in this case who was believed to be responsible for his coworker Matthew's disappearance, and it was believed this was in fact a murder. The case is fascinating, and I think it's best for me to turn it over to my colleagues to explain, how the case first was handled, and Jovin presently is our chief of grand jury, our investigating grand jury, which from my past discussions that was my role in the office for years, for over 15 years, and it's where we're doing some of the best work in solving cases that might not otherwise be solved. And I need to be clear, that's not because law enforcement is failing we work in conjunction with one another to utilize the tools that grand jury gives us to help get to the bottom of some of these unsolved cases. So I'm going to turn it over to Jovin to explain a little bit about the case when it first presented in grand jury.
That's great, Jovin. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's obviously my privilege to be here and talk about this case. It really started about 3 years ago. I first got the call. Jen talked about Detective Schoonover from Percy Borough. He was a young detective. I think he had been a detective for less than 2 years at that point. And he reached out to me, and I can't undersell the tenacity of Detective Schoonover, starting from 3 years ago and to bring it to conclusion as of last month.
Sure.
Young detective, he reached out to me and he said, hey, we got a guy who's missing, which in and of itself is not unusual. As you can imagine, we get reports of missing individuals. Sometimes that's willingly or for other reasons. But I think both Detective Schoonover and I, pretty early on, our suspicions picked up, especially after we learned that a coworker of Matthew Branning also appeared to be missing, according to his family, at the same time.
My goodness.
So as soon as we heard, well, 2 missing persons, there's something going on here. And so we used the tools that are available to law enforcement to try to track down the two men, including trying to find their cell phones. And there was nothing. They were completely off the map. And it really went that way for months, where we had no idea where they were. And then shortly, maybe about 2 to 3 months later, the coworker, Michael Stark, turned up in Michigan. So we always say he was about as far north in the United States as he can go without crossing into Canada. So he turned up there. His family had no contact, did not know he was going there. And so we thought, you know what, there's got to be something to this. There's got to be a reason he fled all the way to Michigan, a place where he had no family, he had no friends. He abandoned his apartment, he abandoned his job, and including his family members, his mother, who was elderly, that he helped care for in the past.
Sure.
His teenage daughter.
My goodness.
So we knew there's something going on here.
Absolutely.
You don't give up all of those things by happenstance. So Jen is probably one of the foremost prosecutors who've handled grand jury cases, and I've had the privilege of working with her in grand jury in the past. And so we decided, you know what, we're going to go ahead and use the investigating grand jury, which has done phenomenal work over the course of many years to help solve some of the most difficult and challenging cases. And Jen has been at the forefront of that. Many cold case homicides, cases that, quite frankly, we just don't have enough information. And we're the grand jury, which I have the privilege of being the chief of now, has the ability to compel individuals to testify and to obtain information that law enforcement may not otherwise be able to do.
Of course.
So,
well, that suspicion was drawn immediately as soon as nobody knows where this person went, and the foremost section of the country, that's where you found them.
Exactly. Yep.
It's amazing.
And part of what we were able to do is use the grand jury and other law enforcement tools to get him back to Pennsylvania, where we had tools to bring it before the grand jury. Prior to getting him before the grand jury, though, we had a lot of work to do, and that involved bringing in witnesses, piecing together, and Jen described it early on as like threading a needle, just picking up the little pieces by little pieces by little pieces. You have those cases where you have a body, someone with a clear-cut injury or a wound, and something bad happened. Here it was building up the case to figure out what exactly happened here.
Of course.
And the grand jury helped us to do that.
My goodness, what a team that you probably molded together, and having at the helm as your leader, Jennifer, which is phenomenal.
Oh, well, thank you for that. But truly, the credit goes to Jovin, and then later Matt when he joined the team, and the detectives, Detective Schoonover and Detective Hanks. But to Jovin's point, so they're gathering information in real time, and we're preparing and putting it into grand jury. And one of the things that became apparent was their movements. I think you should speak about, what was identified as far as the bank, and then subsequently by, information obtained through self-service providers, some license plate readers, toll like toll type Garden State Parkway toll cameras. We were able to map movements, and it was pretty remarkable what we learned.
That's great. If you could take it step by step, that's phenomenal.
No body at this time, right?
No body, and that's a really important fact. And then Matt will take it over when we get to how challenging. Ultimately, I will spill the tea a little bit. We did find Matthew's body, which actually made the case more challenging, and Matt will explain that.
Great.
But, do you want to describe the events?
Please do.
So as Jen talked about, Matthew Branning had a very consistent schedule. He would go to work around 9 o'clock in the morning, leave work around 4 p.m., and always go back to his home to his elderly mother and his 2 brothers. So on the dot 4 o'clock, he'd leave. His home was maybe 5 minutes away from his workplace in Sellersville, Bucks County, and he just never made it home that day. So as Detective Schoonover early on, he started looking into, what can we search to see where did Matthew go, what is Matthew doing? And we obtained Matthew's banking records. And we found that at 4:07 p.m., so about 7 minutes after Matthew would normally leave work, he was at a BB&T bank, and there was a withdrawal made of $500 from a drive-up ATM. And so Detective Schoonover pulls that video, and what we see is Matthew Branning. This is the last really image that we ever have of Matthew Branning.
Of course.
In the driver's seat of his vehicle, a Lexus SUV. He rolls down the window. Front passenger seat is empty. Matthew goes ahead and pulls out the $500. And it was hard to see initially. Even bank investigators who we had asked, like, hey, is there anything else you can see there? They initially said no. But Detective Schoonover, as soon as we got that video picked up on, there was an individual sitting behind Matthew Branning.
Oh, boy.
The window was up, tinted, hard to see through, but distinct movement of an individual sitting behind Matthew. So, again, our suspicion was heightened by the fact that why would nobody sit in that front passenger seat? If this was 2 friends, for instance, out for a drive, the friend's going to sit in the front passenger seat, not behind Matthew.
How many years was that? Did they still have that video after all those years?
So we were actually able to obtain that video within 2 weeks or so of Matthew being reported missing.
Jolly. Good point.
Yep. And
a lot of times they go over they'll reuse.
Absolutely. And we ran into some of those challenges as the investigation continued.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just curious as you're talking.
No, it was a great question. But fortunately, BB&T Bank was very cooperative, helped us out, got us the records, and got us that video. And we saw this distinct movement behind Matthew. So, again, learning that not just Matthew, but his coworker Michael Stark went missing. I talked earlier about cell phone records. And what we saw was distinct movement of their cell phones. So Detective David Hanks, retired colleague of ours, he might have been the first county detective, as you can imagine, cell phones have become so prominent in everyday life.
Of course.
Over the years now, we've been able to use cell phones and the movement of cell phones to build cases. They've become critical pieces of evidence in proving cases, the movement of individuals.
Of course.
And Detective Hanks has been qualified as an expert in court and is absolutely phenomenal at mapping out cell phone data. And that's what he did in this case. So what we saw was Matthew's phone, the movements of his phone across the Scudder's Falls Bridge into New Jersey. So not back home.
I guess that's the pinging effect. You can ping phones.
Like a historical. This was like the equivalent of a ping, but historical data.
Yeah.
Wow.
Instead of a live ping.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. So between his cell phone records and he had a Google account, Google records, we're basically able to map the movement of Matthew's phone from the point of that BB&T bank transaction in Sellersville to crossing a bridge into New Jersey, and then ultimately heading all the way down to Somers Point, New Jersey.
Wow. We're going to take a quick break while I can to identify some of our sponsors. I want to thank Paul Muller for sponsoring all of our shows, Behind the Badge, Justice for All, Let's Go Places. But we're going to take this track by track by track so that people can understand the diligent work and the fine technology that's involved for prosecuting this case. And then we'll talk about the speed as well, which is a compliment in a way. We'll return after a few moments.
Hi, Paul Muller here, and there's never been a better time to be part of the team. New car inventory is back. We have over 100 new Toyotas ready to drive home today with some of our most popular models available. And with a huge selection of dependable certified used Toyotas, our pre-owned departments are ready to make a deal that works for you. Plus, our award-winning service centers will have you in and out and back on the road in no time. Visit one of our 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton, or online at teamtoyota.net.
Are you a parrot head? Not that kind. That's more like it. If you're this kind of parrot head, don't forget to check out the Denny-O Polka Show every Saturday from 9 a.m. to noon right here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com.
Hey, this is Jonesy. Kick off your Thursday and Friday evenings in style. Join me for an eclectic freeform mix of the hits and beyond. It's a happening, a musical journey. It's the Glenn Jones Radio Experience, right here on 1490 WBCB and 107.3 FM, Thursday and Friday, 5 to 6 p.m., directly following the legendary Jerry Blavitt. Radio, the way it ought to be.
Welcome back to our return here with Justice for All with Jennifer Schorn, our Bucks County District Attorney, and 2 special guests who are covering piece by piece an incredible artwork involved in prosecuting and bringing this person to justice, which is the purpose of this show. Jovin, you can continue, my friend.
I appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So I talked about Matthew Branning's phone and how we were able to track some of his movements, like leading up to New Jersey. By contrast, we also obtained the records of Michael Stark's phone. And interestingly, what we saw was his phone was active during that day, October 15, 2021, but it turned off. There was no cell phone activity in the area of Bucks County, the Percy area, when his phone was still about 2 miles away from their workplace, Encore, in Silverdale Borough.
Wow.
So, begs the question, why did his phone turn off before arriving at work? So, to understand some of the background, Michael Stark had talked to his employer earlier that day and said that he would be there at work around 3:30 p.m. He was on the verge, and to understand his life circumstances, he was on the verge of losing this job. He had a negative, what we found, we obtained his banking records and found he had a negative banking balance in his account. He had withdrawn his last $20 about 3 days before these events. He was in a desperate life circumstances at that point. So he promised his employer he's going to be there, turns his phone off, and his phone would remain off for several hours.
Okay.
In the meantime, Matthew's phone was initially on leading up to that bridge in New Jersey, and his phone is turned off. So both men's phones are off. We, law enforcement, we have access to license plate readers. So there are really throughout the country, including toll records that capture your license plate. And just like cell phones, we're able to track the movements of individuals, that we're trying to understand where they went.
Sure.
And so piecing together both the cell phone records and the license plate records for Matthew's vehicle, we knew he was driving his Lexus SUV from that BB&T Bank video. We figured out that Matthew was in Somers Point, New Jersey. His banking record showed a gas station purchase in Somers Point, New Jersey. And then an hour and a half of nothing. No cell phone records, no license plate records, no banking activity, nothing. And again, neither men had, they're both from the Pennsylvania area. They did not have contacts or friends down in New Jersey.
Wow.
So incredibly suspicious why,
they would be in that area.
Correct.
Sure.
So hour and a half of nothing. And then suddenly Matthew's vehicle was captured traveling south on the Garden State Parkway in the area of Somers Point, heading down towards Cape May, New Jersey.
Oh boy.
So we've lived this case and we've talked about it because there's going to be instances, and there are several instances in this case where we're trying to comprehend what is in the mind of Michael Stark in that moment. Like, why is he going where he is? And really, I think the only thing we can come up with is he was trying to get as far south as he could at that point. And so Matthew's vehicle was captured traveling into Cape May, New Jersey, the southernmost tip of New Jersey. And I think eventually Michael Stark realized he couldn't go any further without driving into the ocean.
Sure.
So suddenly, Matthew Branning's phone turns back on in Cape May, New Jersey, after having been off for about 4.5 hours.
Wow.
Minutes after that, we see Michael Stark actually by himself entering a Wawa in Cape May. And I can't undersell how impressive what Detective Schoonover did here was in conjunction with Detective Hanks. Looking at the phone records, they could see that Matthew's phone was close to a Wawa, and that was really the only business, and at the time of night was about almost 9:30 p.m. And that was really the only business in that area that we thought they could have gone into. Detective Schoonover, this is, fortunately, Wawa kept the video.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that.
And this was many weeks after Matthew had already been reported missing. Detective Schoonover went to that Wawa, pulled video from around the time of Matthew's phone turning on, and lo and behold, there's no sign of Matthew in that video, but there is Michael Stark.
Of course.
So we see Michael Stark entering this Wawa wearing a hooded sweatshirt, hood covering his head,
over
on what was an unseasonably warm day. And so he has this hood obscuring his face. The sleeves of the hoodie are covering his hands, and he actually, as he opens the door of the Wawa, has his hands covered. I think he was being even cautious then.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah, to not leave any type of trace evidence behind on that door. And he walked into that Wawa. And this was so important because what we find is, and again, Wawa, they helped us. They tracked down the video and the transaction. And what we found was that Michael Stark, with cash, paid for a charger, a phone charger. And again, tremendous work by Detective Hanks and Detective Schoonover. We figured out what type of phone Michael Stark had and what type of phone Matthew Branning had. The charger that Michael Stark bought would not have worked for his own phone.
Wow.
It worked for Matthew Branning's phone.
Wow.
So we knew at that point, like, Matthew Branning had to have been deceased at that point.
Absolutely.
And Michael Stark turned his phone on, realized he needed to charge it, went into that Wawa and bought a charger for Matthew Branning's phone. And again, no sign of Matthew anywhere. So after that transaction, Michael's phone actually turns back on for the first time in 6 hours. And so both men's phones are on in the same location in Cape May, the same place we know Matthew's vehicle was. So we know Michael Stark was traveling with the vehicle. We knew he was traveling with Matthew's phone. And based off of the video, our belief was he had murdered Matthew.
Obviously,
at that point.
No sign of Matthew.
Correct.
Nothing on the videos in Wawa or anything like that.
Exactly.
Sure.
Incredibly suspicious.
Yeah.
So then both men's phones travel up the Garden State Parkway. Because I think at that point, I believe the reason Michael Stark turned on Matthew Branning's phone was he didn't know where he was going. He didn't understand the lay of the land in New Jersey.
Sure.
He thought he could keep going further south, and eventually realized, well, can't go any further south.
Any further than this.
So the only way to get further south was by going further back north, headed back towards Philadelphia first.
Wow.
So we tracked both men's phones, and then along the Garden State Parkway near the Atlantic City Expressway to head towards Philadelphia, Matthew's phone is turned off for the last time and is never turned back on again.
Wow.
His vehicle, though, is captured by license plate readers heading on the Atlantic City Expressway to Philadelphia, and Michael Stark's phone is traveling along with it every step of the way. And what we find, Detective Hanks's analysis of Michael's historical cell records show that Michael went to the Kensington area of Philadelphia, which obviously a known high drug activity area.
Haven down there for drugs.
K&A.
Yep, K&A.
Yep.
My old neighborhood. That's where I worked as a police officer.
I remember that, yeah. So you know it well.
Very well.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
And the records were even so precise that we had an idea of his phone being in the area of what is commonly referred to as Needle Park.
Yeah, McPherson Square.
Correct.
That's impressive,
Yes.
Tom. Yeah,
Exactly.
McPherson Square, right on Clearfield Street.
Exactly.
I remember it well. There was a library around that area.
Yeah. It's exactly.
Unbelievable.
That would be critical because later on, Matthew's vehicle would be found in Virginia, which I'm getting to.
Yes.
And within the vehicle were crack cocaine vials, which we understood were a type of crack cocaine vials were sold in McPherson Square in
Yes.
Yale Park.
And Jovin,
Yes.
can I just jump in for a moment? You know, to talk about Matthew for a moment. I mean, he was this devoutly religious man who, Jovin mentioned, his family was everything to him, and he lived a very wholesome life. As far as we know, he never smoked. He would actively go out and hike, and I don't think he even drank.
Correct.
And so we knew this was not, two drug associates, going on a bender. Voluntarily disappearing for a bit. Like, it was clear that, and Matthew was known to also carry a lot of cash. He was very kind of traditional in his banking, practices. And so, anyway, just wanted to, so it was clear the crack vials, and Jovin will get to what else was found in the car, were not at all attributed to Matthew, the victim.
And he must have preyed heavily on this, the perp did, on Matthew.
100%, yes. Preyed
No
in
doubt.
the, predatory way,
Yes.
yes, absolutely.
Very much so.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I think he was in desperate life circumstance. He knew Matthew carried a lot of cash, and he in his desperation committed really the most heinous thing you can do.
Sure.
Those phone records show Michael Stark, his phone was in the McPherson Square area, and then his phone turns off, and it turns off for good. His family, his mom, his daughter, his sisters, no one could reach him.
Wow.
And so part of what we ended up arguing in trial was you don't do all of that. You don't give up your contact with your family absent doing something that you can't come back from.
Absolutely. You didn't have a hard... It's apparent that we did not have a hard time convincing the jury with
We'll get to
this type of a case,
so
which
right.
we'll get to.
Yep, so right.
After that, there's both phones were off. We had no idea where Michael Stark had gone until Matthew's vehicle turned up in Virginia. And it was in the Falls Church area of Virginia, an area, again, neither men had any friends or family, any contacts. And the way we had found the vehicle was it had no license plate on it. It was parked in the parking lot of an apartment complex in Virginia. A towing company, through the VIN number, was able to identify that the owner was Matthew Branning and sent a letter to Matthew's family in Sellersville. And that was 2 months after Matthew had gone missing.
Sure. Well, the physical evidence now you have, circumstantial, physical, it's all lining right up.
Yep.
And all the characteristics lead to this guy, no doubt about it.
Well, there's an interesting characteristic that I'm sure Jovin and Matt will. Michael Stark was very short in stature. He was, though, solid, and he was a fighter, we understand, in his past, but remarkably short. And the way the car was found, and then subsequent forensic testing confirmed that he was. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Absolutely.
The front seat and all pulled all the way up.
Exactly.
My God.
Absolutely. So Michael Stark is listed at 5 feet 2 inches. I mean, he might have even been slightly shorter than that. So for a male that's, significantly shorter than, your average male. So
absolutely.
One of the things we observed as soon as that vehicle was recovered was the seat being moved all the way forward. And so we ended up having Detective Hanks, who's about 5 feet 11, 6 feet tall, sit in that driver's seat of that vehicle, and it was a photograph that we presented at trial where his knees are hitting the
right
dash.
Up against the dash. Sure, absolutely.
It was just such a critical, again, threading a needle, these little pieces of evidence to show, quite frankly, that showed us that Michael Stark was the last person to drive Matthew's vehicle.
Absolutely.
And Matthew's the type of person he would have never. They were not friends. They were not close associates. He would have never allowed Michael to drive his car.
Unbelievable. Yeah. We're going to take a quick moment to recognize our sponsors for another station break. Don't go anywhere. You'll have a lot more to hear. This is Bucks County Law and Order, not Law and Order that you see on TV. This is actual things that happen. A lot of times, on the commercials or on a commercial with TV. In New York, they'll say, the identity of the persons or names have been changed and it's fictional.
Right.
This is real life.
That's right.
But we'll return after a few moments. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, Paul Muller here, and there's never been a better time to be part of the team. New car inventory is back. We have over 100 new Toyotas ready to drive home today with some of our most popular models available. And with a huge selection of dependable certified used Toyotas, our pre-owned departments are ready to make a deal that works for you. Plus, our award-winning service centers will have you in and out and back on the road in no time. Visit one of our 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton, or online at teamtoyota.net.
Hi, this is Mayor Jeff Martin of Hamilton Township, inviting you to tune in to our monthly radio show, This Month in Hamilton. Video stream live the 4th Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. at WBCB1490.com. We will be featuring various guests from Hamilton Township to keep you up to date on what's going on in Hamilton.
Are you curious what old antiques, collectibles, or household contents are worth? Listen Friday mornings for What's It Worth with Mike the Appraiser, right here on 1490 WBCB.
Are you a parrot head? Not that kind. That's more like it. If you're this kind of parrot head, don't forget to check out the Denny-O Polka Show every Saturday from 9 a.m. to noon right here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com.
Welcome back to Justice for All with your Bucks County District Attorney, Jennifer Schorn, our special guests today, Jovin Joes and Matt Lannetti, and also really not a special guest. You're just one of the part of the family.
One of the boys.
Yeah, Joe Saffron, the chairman for the Bucks County Tour of Honor. But let's get right back to the events and how chronologically they effectively put this person behind bars.
So I mentioned how Matthew's car was found in Virginia, and again, the seat was moved all the way forward, but also another tool that we have is DNA. So the detectives swabbed the steering wheel of Matthew's vehicle for DNA.
Good.
And one of the most interesting things about the DNA results from that are, even though we know this is Matthew's car and we know he was driving it because we even see him in that BB&T bank video driving the vehicle, his DNA wasn't on that steering wheel.
Wow.
Common misconception, I think, by the public is you touch something and immediately, like, you've left a bunch of DNA on there, you can get it.
Sure.
We know in prosecuting cases in the real world, oftentimes there just isn't enough DNA, or the results are inconclusive, or they don't meet the standards that the DNA analysts are looking for. In this case, even though Matthew's DNA wasn't found on the steering wheel, Michael Stark's DNA was. Really interesting detail, and one of the things that we ended up arguing in trial was, again, that tells us that Michael Stark was the last person to drive that car.
Absolutely.
He drove it all the way from Cape May up to Philadelphia and down to Virginia, to the point where he got his DNA all over that steering wheel.
All over the steering wheel.
To the point where Matthews wasn't even remaining on it anymore.
Wow. Incredible. But now, I know you want to talk about the bug expert, too. I just want to remind you about that.
Yep. So we talked about how we put this case into grand jury, and it was a no-body homicide, which are some of the most challenging cases that you can have.
Yeah, the physical evidence there.
And really, it's just building up the case through, a piece of information like Matthew would never just abandon his family, showing that, he's got no more cell phone activity, no more banking records. The car, when it was found, his driver's license was in there. So it's like, how are you going to survive without your most basic pieces of information?
Well, the fundamentals, sure.
Yep. So no-body homicides are challenging, but the investigating grand jury, after hearing all of these things that I presented to you, as well as several other pieces of information, we were able to subpoena Michael Stark. They heard from Michael Stark, who Jen had the opportunity to question. I don't know if you want to speak about that.
Jen, I'll be anxious to hear that.
And I'll let Jovin do the highlight reel so we can get to the actual trial. But But the arrogance sometimes. I mean, obviously, every individual brought before the grand jury, witness or target, has the right to counsel, and many elect to have counsel, and he did. But we still got some decent statements out of him, and he subsequently agreed to take a polygraph. And of course, we couldn't present this in trial.
Of course.
Which you can imagine the results of the polygraph. But I'll turn it over to Jovin, and then we'll move into the trial.
Great, great.
So some of the things that Michael said, and we actually had his sister was a critical witness in our case. She actually had a conversation with him while he was still in Michigan.
Oh my God!
She was cooperating with us.
That's great.
Yes.
Yep.
That's great.
He gave her information, the information that he testified to. Really what it came down to was there were lies that we can prove were clearly lies. For instance, in his conversation with the sister, he didn't even acknowledge knowing Matthew, claimed to have no idea what she was talking about. He claimed he had essentially left for Michigan before any of this happened.
Then what was his reason for going to Michigan?
Really what they ended up arguing was that he just wanted to go ahead and start a new life, just by happenstance.
Why was she talking to him?
She came to us and was very cooperative and believed that her brother may have been involved, and so we used an investigative technique with her so that we could intercept those communications. She was a good person and really tried.
Michael's brother.
This is Michael, the defendant.
I was thinking it was...
Well, Matthew's family had to testify too, but now the target, meaning ultimately the defendant in this case, his own family, his own sister knew that he...
I'm just slow. It takes me time to
it's a fair question and a good point to,
So we presented this case to the Bucks County investigating grand jury, and at the time it was in spring of 2022. I'm getting that right, or is it 2023 at this point? I think 2023 actually. 23. It had been a year and a half of investigation. We presented to them. We had no idea where Matthew was, but the investigating grand jury was confident and said, "Yep, we agree. There's sufficient evidence to go ahead and charge Michael Stark," and so we moved forward as a no-body homicide. Shortly thereafter, I'm going to turn it over to Matt. Is where this became even more interesting and complex.
Wow.
Yeah,
Matt, welcome to WBCB.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Fantastic.
So Jovin, sort of laid all that out. We charged the case with the case was charged for a while, and then we got a call from the coroner's office in Baltimore County, Maryland, and they said that they had a deceased individual here. They had actually had that deceased individual for a while, and that they had done some testing, and that they believed that it was Matthew Branning.
Okay.
And then the short version of it is sort of there are these sort of nonprofit Good Samaritan type groups who will go around the country and look for missing persons in coroner's offices.
Sure.
And just so happened that we got lucky and that maybe and they found Matthew's body. So they had actually found Matthew's remains about 3 weeks after he went missing. They just didn't know who he was. His ID was still in that car in Virginia, so he was just in the coroner's office in Maryland for about almost 2 years. They reached out to us. They said, "Hey, we have these remains," and they gave us the coroner's report that from the autopsy they had done when they found the body.
Sure.
And we suddenly went from having a case where we had no body but a lot of really good circumstantial evidence to a case where we had a lot of good circumstantial evidence and some really complicated physical evidence. The coroner there had basically determined that they did not know how Matthew had died.
Wow.
They listed the cause of death and the manner of death. So normally that would say something like homicide and gunshot wound to the head or blunt force trauma or something like that.
Of course.
They listed them both as undetermined. And Jovin and I and the detectives actually went down there. We drove down there, we met with her, and she's a very nice lady, and she was just like, I just can't tell.
Sure.
But she did say, and this is what we ended up arguing, that there are certain manners of asphyxiation that you could inflict on somebody that wouldn't necessarily leave remains that you could, marks that you could necessarily see. And
Sure.
she talked a lot about like wide ligature choking, so like a sweatshirt or
Sure.
a bag over the head or an arm bar or something like that. What also complicated things was that after they couldn't find after they didn't have a cause of death, they asked a forensic anthropologist to look at the remains. And the forensic anthropologist gave this very strange, he wrote this very strange report. The whole report was about like a page long. It was really short, and it said very like matter of fact that based on a number of factors that Matthew's body couldn't have been there for more than 5 days. I think he actually said that Matthew had died 5 days before he was found.
Wow.
Which is...
Do you just want to explain also where he was found, Matt?
Yeah, sure. So he was found in sort of like off the side of a road in a rural area in like what I would say characterized as like a drainage area.
Sure, that would make sense.
Yeah, there was a lot of area that was very swampy, and then it would sort of flow down, and then it looked like Matthew's body had just sort of come to rest in this one area. But so he said, hey, listen, I think he died 5 days ago.
Yeah.
Well, the problem was we knew at that time that Michael Stark was in Michigan 5 days before that. So, we're always, this is a search for the truth. It always is, where we go where the evidence takes us. But based on all the evidence, I mean, we believed beyond a shadow of a doubt that Michael Stark had killed Matthew Branning. And so we said, we just know this can't be right. And, Jovin and I and Jen as well, we've done this for a long time, and we'd never really seen a report like that was so specific. It's very strange. Usually they give date ranges and they hedge their bets and stuff like that because you can't really tell. You're sort of your best guesstimate.
And you would think there would be hope that they may have, or the coroner could have said suspicious.
Yeah,
Right.
Instead of undetermined.
So we actually then had a forensic anthropologist that Jen and Jovin had used in a previous case.
Would this be where the bug expert comes in?
We're almost there, yeah.
Calm down, he's there. You're ruining the suspense.
Okay. I'm getting too excited.
I know, this is like the real life. So this forensic anthropologist looked at the remains as well. And he actually said the same thing about the cause of death. He was like, there's nothing here that tells us how he died. They also said pretty definitively, it doesn't appear that he died. He didn't have a heart attack. He didn't have cancer. He wasn't sick or anything like that. But this forensic anthropologist, his name is Dr. Dirkmott. He's from Mercyhurst University. It's like up in Erie. He reviewed the other reports, and he said, this anthropologist report that gives this real specific date range, it's not, he was being, nice, but he was like, I don't agree with it. And
Sure.
He said, he relies a lot on the size of the insects that were found on the body because the body had been out in the elements for a while. And he said, you guys should talk to a forensic entomologist, which is I kept saying, this is a guy who has devoted his life to studying bugs on corpses. Wow. There aren't that many of them, but there happens to be one at Millersville. And so we talked to a forensic entomologist, and he gave us, he disagreed with the other forensic anthropologist, and he said, it's just too specific. You can't say that. And he gave us a date range, and so did our forensic anthropologist. And that date range enabled us to argue, look, he could have died based on the physical evidence at a time when Michael Stark was still with him.
Of course. In a different location, obviously.
Right. And the evidence, we put a map on the screen. It made a lot of sense because the car was found in Virginia. They came from Philadelphia, the Philadelphia area, and Maryland is right in between.
Yeah,
and you could kind of look at the roads and see that he clearly killed him, he dumped him, and then he dumped the car.
Yes.
But we called all these experts at trial. I think that was it's definitely the most experts I've ever called in a single trial. We were like 6 or something like that. And the bug expert was really good, and the other expert did not want to move off his original opinion, and we had some fun. We had a fun time cross-examining him.
Matt eviscerated him on the stand. The defense expert. Well,
Wonderful.
ultimately,
He was a really hard guy. We called him. Yeah.
He deserved it.
he did. And he was almost like he doubled down on this arbitrary principle of his, and it really undermined our case. We weren't asking him to do anything outside of his expertise.
Of course.
But he actually it was very unusual.
Yeah.
You should elaborate.
He had written this opinion where he said, based on the bug evidence, I think he's been here for 5 days. And the point we tried to make on cross-examination was that he's not a bug expert. He's an anthropologist.
Exactly.
We have a bug expert, and he says it's different. That's not right. And I must have asked him 50 times, you're not a forensic entomologist, right? To the point where I think at one point the judge said we don't need to ask him that question anymore. But he just would not back down off that opinion.
Stubborn mule.
It was stubborn. It was tough. And so, but I think it was effective on our end. The jury clearly didn't buy it.
Yeah. I have one more dumb question.
Sure.
How about the dental records? There was no dental records for the body?
Yes.
Or?
There were dental records. That's actually how we identified him. That and DNA.
Sorry, I did it
no,
again.
that's okay. No,
It's unbelievable,
but they didn't really help in terms of cause of death or anything like that. No, but
I
they
mean
did.
to
We're able to identify him with dental records. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the group that Matt talked about that utilized their expertise to help coroners connect to, individuals who are in NamUs, the national database for missing individuals. So it was pretty cool. But you're right on it. You're right on it, Charlie.
Charlie, I'm impressed once again. I'm telling you, it's incredible, your talent.
Right.
We're going to take another quick pause. I hope you're as excited and anxious to hear the outcome of this as we are here. Well, some people already know.
Some people are more excited.
Yeah, me, the bug expert. But at any rate, you're listening to Jennifer Schorn, Jovin, and Matt. Joe Safran is over there with his arms folded and just loving every minute of this. It's a great story, a great prosecution case.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. But you're listening to WBCB 1490 AM on the dial and 107.3, Justice for All, with our Bucks County District Attorney Jennifer Schorn. We'll return after a few moments. Don't go anywhere. We have a lot more to share with you.
Hi, Paul Muller here, and there's never been a better time to be part of the team. New car inventory is back. We have over 100 new Toyotas ready to drive home today with some of our most popular models available. And with a huge selection of dependable certified used Toyotas, our pre-owned departments are ready to make a deal that works for you. Plus, our award-winning service centers will have you in and out and back on the road in no time. Visit one of our 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton, or online at teamtoyota.net.
Hey, this is Jonesy. Kick off your Thursday and Friday evenings in style. Join me for an eclectic freeform mix of the hits and beyond. It's a happening, a musical journey. It's the Glenn Jones radio experience right here on 1490 WBCB and 107.3 FM, Thursday and Friday, 5 to 6 p.m., directly following the legendary Jerry Blavitt. Radio, the way it ought to be.
Hi, this is Mayor Jeff Martin of Hamilton Township, inviting you to tune in to our monthly radio show, This Month in Hamilton. Video stream live the 4th Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. at WBCB1490.com. We will be featuring various guests from Hamilton Township to keep you up to date on what's going on in Hamilton.
I can't wait.
Your teeth are in. Good.
What are friends for?
What are friends for? Are we on? Welcome back to Justice for All. For the sake of time, obviously, as this hour goes by quickly, thanks to Jennifer Schorn and these wonderful topics, agendas that you bring up. Thank you so much on behalf of the listenership. I sound like Aldo Ray here with the hoarseness this morning. But let's get right back. We have about 10, 11 minutes.
Sure. So we crossed this bug expert. We presented a lot of evidence. We had an exceptionally easy family to work with in terms of the victim's family. They were so wonderful and gracious considering what they were going through. And that's, different people grieve differently, different people process things differently, and so we never begrudge anyone with how they react to being the victim of a crime.
Sure.
But man, the Matthews family was just so incredible, and so took everything in stride. I can remember meeting with them when we found when we told them, hey, listen, we found Matthew's remains, but it actually makes our case worse. But they took it in stride, and then even then, this is a family who didn't have his remains for a year and a half, and then we found them, and we had to say, we can't give them to you right now because we need to do some more work.
Boy.
And they were just so great. They were there throughout the whole trial, and it was great. But so we tried the case. It was like 4 or 5 days. The bug expert, actually, we had to fly him in from Montana, and so we had to wait an extra day. We had like a day off in the middle while we waited for him to get there.
Wow.
And we got to the end. Jovin gave just an amazing, poignant, and powerful closing argument, and the jury went out, and it was like maybe like 4:15 or 4:30 on a Monday afternoon, and Jovin and I went back to our office, and the judge had said to us, I'm going to let them, get settled and pick a foreperson and talk until 5 o'clock. And then at 5 o'clock, I'm going to call them, and I'm going to say, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay and work into the night and see how long it takes you, or do you want to come back tomorrow? We said, that's fine. And at about 4:45, Jovin and I were looking at each other, and we said, are we supposed to go back up there at 5, or is he going to call us? And Jovin said, well, I'll just call. We'll just go back up, and we'll see what's going on.
Of course.
And he called the Detective Schoonover, and he said, hey, Detective, we're going to go back up to the courtroom, see what the judge wants to do with the jury for the rest of the day. And Detective Schoonover says, oh, I'm already up there. Actually, they just came out and said they have a verdict.
Wow, 30 minutes.
It wasn't even that. I want to say it was like 22.
Yeah.
And I said, and Jovin tells me that, and I remember I was in my office and he was in the doorway, and I said, he's obviously like misunderstood what they said. There's no way they had a verdict. And I mean, to be perfectly honest, Jovin and I, this was a hard case, and we were a little bit like, we were hopeful and confident that we were going to get a good outcome, but it wasn't a slam dunk. And so we go back up there, and I said to the court staff, well, I heard they have a verdict, but I assume that's not correct. And they were like, no, they have a verdict. And I remember I turned to Jovin and I said, well, we either won or we lost spectacularly.
Yeah, one way or the other.
That quick is usually good, though.
Yeah.
Quick is usually good. That's what kind of
Usually.
we were like, knock on wood, we were hoping for. But and then they came out and they convicted him of all the counts.
First-degree murder.
First-degree murder, second-degree murder,
Beautiful.
Robbery, kidnapping.
Use of a corpse.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
God,
we did have
yeah.
that.
Exactly.
Yep.
You're amazing.
I know.
And the judge sentenced him right there on the same day to life sentence, and then a concurrent life sentence on the other murder charge, and then some consecutive 20 to 40 years, right? Yeah, on kidnapping and robbery. That was just a great result.
Well, needless to say, yes, he's staying in jail for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
How old was this guy?
He's about 50.
50?
Yeah.
So he's got a shot of getting out when he's about 145.
Yeah.
2 lives.
Good thing it wasn't Philly. Be out in 10 years.
In 10 years, yeah. My goodness.
It's funny because this really was a complex case from jump, and even got more challenging, as Matt said, after Matthew's body was recovered. But all along, I was like, you guys are going to do this. I knew it. I knew the talent, the dedication. I knew their team. Matt was added to the team for a reason, to complement this Jovin's strengths from the beginning on this
Sure.
case in grand jury. But on a case, this homicide case, we have 2 people, and they were the perfect team. And so I got to gloat when the verdict came
You
back so
deserve it.
quickly, because I knew we had the best team on this case, and really credit to all of them. And as Matt said, this family, they were lovely. And we get into like the forensic aspect, and sometimes I'll say we kind of geek out on
Of course.
nuanced issues. But at the end of the day, the family had to hear all of this, and to hear the litigation on the issue of the corpse and the decomposition. And I mean, man, they were remarkable and so grateful. I don't believe this case would have been solved
Without the
this
hard
team.
efforts and work.
Great. Congratulations, guys.
Congratulations is
Great,
right.
great
Thanks,
job.
Rich.
How often do I say on all of our shows looking at the audience, our listeners, I should say, that if you commit a crime in Bucks County, you will be found.
Have to move to Missouri.
And you will,
Michigan.
Doesn't matter where you go, we'll find you, and you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I say it all the time.
You do,
and that's a tribute to you and your team of professionals.
I do work with some great people.
My
really am
God,
very
they're just
lucky.
great. I don't have to watch TV tonight. SUV. This is real life stories. And the time, the prosecutorial time, to be able to get a verdict of guilty in 22, 25 minutes.
On balance, Jovin and I were talking in the grand jury for about over 10 months, roughly 10 months or so. And then literally we just, the third year anniversary just passed. And they tried it last month. So I knew it was hot off the presses when I asked them to come here.
Jen, that's phenomenal.
They came back that quick.
Yeah.
22 minutes.
Whoever got the straw.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pull all the.
That was quick.
Child, that's an incredible story. Jennifer, incredible
Thank you.
actual story, and he's behind bars for the rest of his life.
Yep.
Obviously, that poor guy never harmed anyone, and to end up that way as a victim, it's terrible.
Yeah.
But it was, it had to be satisfaction for the family.
It really was. And
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm assuming he never confessed or said what happened, or you never really know.
He didn't, but he was quite resigned to the verdict. Like, he was not, you know, you look at the defendant when the verdict is rendered, and
they know.
Yeah, like, it was almost like,
Yeah,
was
he knew.
He knew. And we forgot to mention, we had tremendous help from another county. And Jovin, do you just want to mention, because that ended up being the county that dealt with the Idaho murder in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So when we were trying to get Michael Allen Stark back to Pennsylvania,
So Monroe County, it turned out Mr. Stark had another case pending in front of Monroe County and had an active warrant with them. So early on, when we didn't know exactly what happened, we didn't have enough to charge Michael Stark with murder, but we knew he was in Michigan.
Of course.
Our thought was, how do we get him back?
Extradition.
Correct. And they worked with us tremendously to ensure that we can get him back.
Sure.
Without that, I don't know if we track him down or find him. You know, it's like we were
easy.
able to get him into custody on their warrant and then extradite him back to Pennsylvania. And then once we had him here within our reach, we were able to then compel him to the grand jury, get him charged, and had him in Bucks County prison pending trial. And then we were able to convict him, and so that he was never able to see the light of day again.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent work, Jovin, Matt, Jennifer, obviously, and a lot of work that goes behind it, all the cooperatives as well, all of our legal representatives. Just another fantastic story, Justice for All, why we have this program, so that you become much more educated and realize the favorable elements living in Bucks County.
Yeah.
You know, having a great prosecutorial system, you know, here, led by Jennifer Schorn. Joe, we have a minute. I wanted you to recognize this event that's coming, the raffle that we're doing for the Bucks County Tour of Honor.
You want me to follow this?
You can't follow that, no. No, just a quick one, Joe, our chairman.
Good luck.
County. Yeah, we're closing in about a minute and a half.
Okay, real quick update. The Tour of Honor trip for next year is scheduled for April the 7th.
That's a Monday.
It's a Monday, yes, and we have we're allowed to take 4 buses into Arlington Cemetery.
Thanks for your work.
We're working on trying to get another one in, but
Sure.
we are already 2 buses full.
Okay.
So, and we just starting to advertise. So, I want everybody to understand it. You know, you want to go, get your applications in.
Yes, absolutely.
And the other thing, our raffle fundraiser is
It's
out.
It's in the works right now.
You should get the works in. I just want to remind some of the people out there, we don't know if your veteran has passed.
That's true.
And they call and they start yelling and screaming that we should take them off the list. We'll be happy to take them off the list. Just
once we become aware.
Let us know that they've passed, and we'll be happy to remove them.
And
from
Joe,
the list.
on that, comment, always remember that we're carrying the torch for all of our military that have passed. in memory of their courageous efforts and all. So please don't show any scorn. You know, we're doing the best we can, and when we're made aware of someone's passing,
we're totally volunteer.
Absolutely,
no one gets paid. There's
No.
nothing, you know. So
yeah, we just want to honor.
sometimes things take a little longer to get done, but they get done.
Right, exactly.
And our major priority is to get the veterans down to Washington.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the most important
That's the major thing. So if you didn't get a letter back saying thank you right away,
Yes.
you know, that's because we're working on getting the guys, next group down to Washington.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate
Nah,
that.
it's no problem. Thank you.
On behalf of everyone here, our staff, Charlie Esposito, of course, Elena that's joined us today with Bree. I'm Tom Mellon, Jennifer Schorn, she is just spectacular with the shows that she brings to our listenership, and I want to thank you again very much. Jovin and Matt, thank you for joining us today. Hopefully you'll come back. And
Absolutely.
we just have a boatload, that's a great word to use, it's a boatload of stories that we'll continue to share with our listeners here in Bucks County and elsewhere. Tom Mellon once again on behalf of WBCB, 1490 and 107.3 on the dial. Be safe, stay well, don't text while you drive. Jerry, I'm coming home to walk the dog. And most importantly, God bless America.